The best idea wins. The golden rule of so many celebrated companies and artistic groups is simple. The best idea wins. It's a commitment among collaborators to remove the egos in the room for the sake of what they're creating. That sounds pretty obvious. The best idea wins. Why did that even need to be said? In order for the best idea wins to be insightful, we must feel as collaborators, naturally, that our own ideas are always the best ideas. So when you're working on something solo, how do you know which idea is best? How do you know ideas are good or bad? How do you entertain more than one idea? I will say this, when an artist works alone in capturing a concept, it's easy to narrow their viewpoint in the name of passion. In fact, that's what people come to us for. You focus on a set perspective and you give it your all. You become convincing in your unique world and viewpoint. That's born out of subjectivity, and that's good art. It makes sense then that group subjectivity exists and is the hidden reason why collaborations can feel so special. Different people with different viewpoints looking at the same thing from different angles. That's also born out of subjectivity, and that's also good art. Collectives, bands, co-productions. The best and the brightest are often found not alone, but among their peers, and that's not a coincidence. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. Not all of us have people to collaborate with to help bring the best out of ourselves. Even if you do have access to people you can work with, you might be the kind of person who doesn't want to, or at least doesn't feel comfortable doing it. If this sounds like you, the question you might be asking is, have you already cut yourself off at the knees? Well, today I want to go over some ways that can bring you the best about collaborating with others, even when it's just yourself. The best tool that collaborators have is a detachment from other members' ideas. If I'm working with someone, I come up with an idea and I bring it to them. Naturally, I'm going to feel like that idea is my baby. I don't want to kill it because I put all this time and effort into coming up with it. My ego is now a part of this. In some ways, how well an idea does in the group reflects on me as an artist and a person. It hurts when a person I'm working with hears it and doesn't feel the same way I do. Getting your ideas shot down is something a lot of people don't like about working with others. But if you're working in a healthy environment, getting your ideas questioned and criticized is actually the best part. You have others in the room you trust who help you become less attached to your personal view in favor of a collective one. And you know what? It's often that I'll wake up the next day after being in the studio with someone, thanking them for saying no to an idea I had. That's because once I became more detached from the idea with time, I know that they made the right call. And that's what makes them good collaborators. So how do we become detached from our own ideas? An artist's natural state is to make every idea and concept that we come up with an extension of ourselves, because it is. So how do we separate ourselves from that thought process to make better work? How do we become better collaborators to ourselves? To create like a lover and edit like a hater, write like family and destroy like strangers. Believe it or not, we do have some tools at our disposal to make this happen. One of those tools is time. Time heals all wounds. I think we've heard that. But it also reveals bad ideas. The notion that you're up at night about to do something stupid and your friend says, why don't you sleep on it? That's the essence of what I'm talking about. Create an idea, put it in a drawer. Come back to it in a few months and you'll be able to have the level of detachment needed to see what works about it and what doesn't. Sometimes I'll make a draft of something I love at the time, come back to it in 2 weeks and see it was garbage all along. Other times I've done something that went nowhere, only to dig it up and realize it's the core of my next song. Seeing an idea at face value to use it as a springboard for something bigger is a superpower once you tap into it. It's also why you see 11 writing credits on a 2-minute song. If you've ever had a good idea you've been unable to finish or turn into something more, remember this: ideas are not finished. You can repeat that: ideas are not finished. Sometimes we have an initial spark or aha moment and feel like we need to be faithful to that initial moment. Then when it comes to build it out, we struggle to use it as a foundation for anything more. If you're too faithful to an idea, you might not actually be able to use it. I can't tell you how many times I've taken an idea and reworked it from its original intent. Often it'll turn into something that's 10 times better, even if the initial idea gets disfigured and lost in the process. An example, I made a draft of a song that consisted of a loop with lyrics. It was cool, but it didn't get to a place I wanted it to go, so I shelved it. 3 years later, I was on the last leg of my album making process and I pulled out the song again. I reworked it with some drums and instrumentation. I also had lyrics from another song I wrote a few years before. Those lyrics were written to a 3-bar loop. I put those lyrics over this reworked beat, which was a 4-bar loop. So since I wrote the lyrics to a 3-bar loop and it was a 4-bar loop, I just left every 4th bar blank. That song became Afraid of Us, one of the best songs I've made to date. And it all stemmed from a self-collaborative environment that was offered to me through time and time travel. I also then collaborated with real people, Kiefer and Zero, to finish it. My point is, when you're in the moment of putting things together, you shouldn't hold individual ideas special. Recognize when they're good, but also recognize that they aren't the finished product. Allow them to be processed in the necessary ways and make peace with the fact they might die so that something finished can live. Well, detachment through time is all well and good, but what if you only have a few hours? I've been spending the last couple years working on real-time creative detachment, making these decisions by myself in a matter of hours. In other words, honing my instincts to know when something needs to be expanded on and when something needs to go in favor of something better, and doing that in one session. This sort of real-time decision-making can be difficult, especially when you lack experience, but I hope that my videos are allowing you all into a glimpse of seeing at least one person doing this with their own work. I'm gonna make something here right now, and while I'm doing that, I'm gonna point out at what times I'm collaborating with myself. Sometimes it's retroactive, but other times I'm purposely doing things in a way that allows me to edit and restructure ideas in a way that doesn't feel like a betrayal. I took a quick break outside, so my transition shades are now activated. Quick, let's do something cool. That actually sounded pretty fire. I wish I recorded that. One of the most obvious ways that I collaborate with myself is to create sampling material that doesn't consider what it's going to become. So I don't play chord progressions, or I don't play rhythmically in the way that I think it's going to end up in the song. I kind of let myself do a little bit of like a free write. I just cut up the words and rearrange them into sentences later on. It's really fun, and it by default detaches you from the experience and from the idea itself. Creating ideas with this fate in mind is actually very freeing, and it's something that I find constant inspiration in. So let's take a look at the wide cam. Okay. I'm not necessarily thinking about like what this is going to become. I'm not thinking about how I'm going to work it into like a full track. The idea here is to almost act like another musician entirely and create something that I can then sample. I like that sort of movement, but maybe the sound is too dull. Let's turn on the analog heat plus effects. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this through it and dirty it up a little bit. Like that. I do like that reverb on there, though. That's nice. So I kind of like the way that the reverb is crafting the tail end of this sound. I'm not gonna go for sustained notes. I'm just gonna make these little short chords. Let's see where that goes. So now I'm recording. So I kind of just made that without thinking. I didn't think too hard about the intent behind a lot of that. I think giving up that sort of part of it is going to make it easier for me to be more of a collaborator right now when I pick it apart and see what works and what doesn't work. It's almost like an auto-generative process or a semi-generative process for myself, which is a nice way to think about it, because then you don't get too married to the ideas initially. So let's go over there and let's see what we can find. Now, I didn't make this. Somebody else made this. That's sort of the mindset you have to be in order to make this work. So right now what I'm doing is I'm slicing each individual chord. You don't have to do this if you're not working on the octatrack or something like that. If you have a machine or a DAW that does this automatically, this will be a much faster process for you. But actually, the way that I'm manually chopping this gives me another opportunity to detach from what I just did. The negative is that I have to basically sit here while I do this. It's busy work. But the fact that I'm now hearing this not as the recording I made, but just as individual pieces, this gives me yet another opportunity to detach from my original moment. It all works in my favor in the end. I like that one. A lot of these ones that are higher up in the register sound really cool. All here, and I'm not going to have to use all 58 slices. I mean, God, that would be terrible. That's pretty cool. That's cool. Let's get that down before I forget. That's pretty sick. I like that little bounce of a delay. Let's move on from here. Let's start crafting something here in terms of drums. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to push all these back because I want these to kind of be late versus the drums. Make it feel like the drums have space to be before these come in, because these are pretty noisy and disruptive. See, I accidentally deleted a couple trigs or sample slices, but now that I'm hearing it, I like it. So that's another collaboration that you can do with yourself, is collaborating with accidents. I think leaning into accidents is probably one of the biggest cheat codes that producers have, or any artist has. Chaotic chance is sometimes way more poetic and way more beautiful than anything that we could come up with. So kind of removing ego from your decisions, the accidental thing might be the better thing. Something worth thinking about. So we're actually not going to use this kick. It's just there's a placeholder. So I pitched that kick to kind of be the same tune as the sample that we're playing with. And then I'm going to shorten it so that way, if I want to move on from that tone in the bass line, I can without there being too much of a problem. So I don't want to filter out the sound, but there is kind of like a resonance in like the lows, low mids on the sample. So I'm actually going to bring in a equalizer here. So the idea is to kind of turn up a frequency band and find the place that you want less of. Find it where the sound is now the most obnoxious it could possibly be, and then turn that down. So I like this snare. It has a hi-hat at the end. So I'm going to chop that into two parts, a hi-hat and the snare part. And then I'm going to try to make, a hi-hat pattern on the same track as the snare. So let's see how that goes. It's not bad. So now that I have the drums and like the core idea, now I can mess around with the idea itself, like the sample chops that I have, and see if anything works better. Again, this is all about taking ideas that you like and that you are married to and that you have associated with your ego and your artistic like vision, and kind of destroying them in the process, in your mind at least. What you're doing is you're actually letting them evolve into something more beautiful. And if you don't open yourself up to that, then you will never move beyond the core idea. So, let's just see if there's any place where it exists that feels better to me. So something that I heard that I needed to change was the snare and the hi-hat. I brought that down one semitone in pitch to make everything kind of glue a little bit together tonally. So I like that with this. That's cool. I like that. All right, we got that going. think that was it. Kind of like this without the original sample better. I'm gonna record this bass. Nice. It's an interesting situation because the original idea that I had doesn't match the song anymore. Sometimes the original idea needs to get killed in order for the song to be better. I'm actually going to remove all of this, basically the first track's like chops, and now I'm going to play the rest of the beat that I made. That's cool. There we go. But that's the topic in action, essentially. I played something with the intention of me sampling it. And then once I did that, I chopped it up and created an idea. And then off that idea, I built something. I didn't like it very much. But then I realized that all of the other components had something special outside of the original idea. I destroyed the original idea and then rebuilt it around what I created. This is sort of the collaborative environment that, you know, working with somebody else would provide. You come with an idea, they hear something of potential in it, they maybe rework it or you know, say, hey, maybe it'll be better this way. The 2 or 3 or 4 of you or 11 of you would basically come together to bring out the best in yourselves, to find something that all of you agree on is, you know, the best idea, right? The best idea wins. And right now, I kind of just did that with myself. So now that we have this with the, you know, the recontextualized original idea, now we can finish building on it. I think that's the last thing I need here, at least for the iteration that we're doing for the video. I do like this. Ooh, the filtered out choir. I like it. Okay, that's it. Thank you so much for joining me. The Living Beat Tape, it's basically like this ever-growing record or album that I'm giving to my Patreon subscribers week after week. So there's that. There's also a John Makes Beats Discord now that's available through the Patreon. And there we have these sample challenges that I'm facilitating for producers that want to kind of, sharpen their teeth. John Makes Beats merch. This is what is called the work uniform, the JMB work uniform. You can find it at jonmakesbeats.com, but this is essentially comes in 4 colors, and this is the outfit that I'm going to be wearing from here on out on the show. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.